Morning, everyone. So good afternoon for those joining us from Malawi. You're welcome to this event that we're having today. It's about advancing equality, justice, and education in Malawi. So my name is Nasim. I am the Communications and Engagements lead here at the SMP. I'll shortly pass this on to Dorothea, so I won't take much of your time, just a few housekeeping. Those in the room, we're not going to have any fire drills today. So if you hear anything, there's Dorothea, we can just go out and then it should take us where the emergency exit. And I'm sure the bathrooms are just outside the corridor to your right-hand side. You'll see one at the end of the door. If you're not sure, you can always ask as well. We're in here to help. And for those joining us online, please remember to keep your mics muted so that you are not distracting anything and anyone. You're welcome to introduce yourself in the chat box. So we just want to know where you're joining us from, your name and who you are. Feel free to do that. If you also have any other questions while the meeting is in progress, please put them in the chat box and we'll be happy to address them if time permits. So I will hand over to Dorothea. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nasim. Hello, welcome to our meeting. I'm Dorothea. I'm the membership lead here at the SMP. We will hear from our two guests, Sarai Chisala-Tempelhoff, founder and executive director of the Gender and Justice Unit, GJU, and Harold Kuombola, Link Education's executive director, Malawi. There will be time at the end for questions and answers. Please feel free to add any questions, comments you might have to the chat at any point during their presentations. We will then hear from Linda Dembo, the CEO of our sister organization, the Malawi-Scotland Partnership, who will give initial reflections from a MaSP perspective. And then that will be followed by question and answers, and Stuart Brown, the CEO of the SMP, will make the closing remarks. Before I introduce our first speaker, let me introduce the people around the table here today. We've got SMP team members, Stuart Brown, our CEO, Chad Morse, our deputy CEO, Nasim Vadalia, Comms and Engagement, Ian Mitchell, aka Mitch, who's our Youth and Schools Officer, and we also have with us Sam Ross, who's Link Education's Executive Director, Programs and Partnerships. Let me introduce our first speaker. Human rights lawyer Sarai Chisala-Tempelhoff, founder and executive director of the Gender and Justice Unit. The GJU works through strategic litigation, legal research, advocacy, and partnerships to promote access to justice in Malawi. Trained as a lawyer, Sarai has specialized in human rights and democratization in Africa, as well as women's and gender studies. I'm sure she will introduce herself much better than this. Thank you, Sarai. Up to you. Over to you.
Thank you. That was a great introduction. I was just hearing you say what the Gender and Justice Unit does and realized that we need to change that up because our focus is really legal empowerment. And yes, whilst we do strategic litigation and those other things, our real focus is legal empowerment. I want to thank you for inviting me to participate in today's session. It really means a lot to me to be able to platform the work that the Gender and Justice Unit does. And based on those close ties between Scotland and Malawi, it really felt serendipitous to come and be here today and talk about the work that we do. So I guess without further ado, I might jump into my presentation. It isn't a presentation so much as just an insight into the work of the Gender and Justice Unit. And I want all of you to picture this. A woman in rural Malawi, we all know her. Her husband has just left her. She has 3 children, no money, no maintenance, no way of getting a hold of him. She knows that this is wrong and that something is wrong. But she doesn't know about her legal rights. She can't afford a lawyer. The nearest court is closed. So she does nothing. And this made me ask, what good is a law that the woman it protects cannot read, cannot access, and cannot afford? But now, give her a phone, any phone, and she dials a toll-free number, 4285 in Malawi, and a voice in her own language walks her through her right to maintenance, how to file, what to expect, where to go, what papers to take with her, how much she might be asked to pay. Turns out that she didn't need a lawyer. She just needed the law to speak to her. And that is Empowerline. That is the work of the Gender and Justice Unit. We developed a toll-free legal empowerment tool, a platform for gender-based violence survivors, and it is just the beginning of their journey. For our organization, most legal organizations actually stop at awareness, but we don't. Empowerline, that number that I mentioned, 4285, that's just the door. But behind it is a complete pathway from knowledge to justice. So step one, she dials 4285, she hears her rights. Through Empowerline's toll-free line or application, because we also have a mobile app, it's in her own language, it's on her phone, it's anonymous, she can do this anywhere. In fact, every 2 hours, a woman walks through this door for the first time by calling a number. Step two, our community liaisons. So a community leader, a woman that she knows, a woman that her neighbors know, someone who's familiar to her in her community, one of the trained network of women community leaders that we work with, identifies her need, explains her options, and ensures that she doesn't face the system alone, because we know oftentimes for women, the biggest barrier to continuing the justice pathway is doing it alone. Step three, GJU brings a mobile legal clinic to her. Not a distant office, not an expensive lawyer, our free mobile clinics bring legal advice, trauma-informed support, rights awareness, and referrals directly into her community. So we bring paralegals, we bring lawyers, we bring relevant district gender-based violence responders, social welfare officers, child protection officers, and we also bring the court registrars, people who can immediately register a case during that legal clinic. So women who would never walk into a courthouse, they walk into these legal clinics. And then step four, justice is delivered. When the courts are closed and inaccessible, which is very often the case in rural parts of Malawi, we bring mobile courts to her district because the court is the magistrate and the magistrate can move. Cases of maintenance, custody, and divorce are heard, decided, and resolved, often for the first time in the entire community's memory. So this is not just a program. For us, it is actually a proven end-to-end model that takes a woman from silence to justice. A little bit of the numbers. In the last year, we had 4,121 women reached through our legal clinics. 94 women assisted through our GBV hotline, which is separate to 4285, although people can access a Gender and Justice Unit officer through 4285. We had 25 cases filed in mobile courts that were held in Nidza, in communities where the courts don't exist. In fact, the Maunde courts opening was a big event for everybody in that area. And I want to put in here that we work very closely with the Women Judges Association of Malawi. I saw that Justice Ntaba has joined us online, and I want to thank her for her participation today. They help train the courts officials. They have a special mobile court policy that ensures trauma-informed decision-making is being carried out. We had 25 cases filed. We had 14 mobile court judgments delivered, which is an astounding number, especially where oftentimes cases can lag for years in court. To be able to see a woman bring her case forward, have the case registered, take the case to court, and have a decision made, it's been radical. And like I said earlier, every 2 hours, someone calls a power line and reaches the law for the first time. Now, I've been working for a long time in women's justice and women's rights, and very often I get the question, well, what about men? I would like to share today that it turns out that anonymous legal information in your own language in your phone is also something that men need. Almost half of the callers of Empowerline are men. Now we are scaling. Thanks to 3-year funding from the Irene M. Stahelin Foundation, this entire model, Empowerline, our community leaders, our mobile courts, and our legal clinics is expanding to 11 districts across Malawi. We are currently in 2, in Lilongwe and in Dedza. So now this is no longer just a pilot. This is really actively becoming a movement reaching national scale. We work very closely with the government of Malawi's Ministry of Gender. We work very closely with the Women Judges Association of Malawi. We've been funded and supported by Trucker, the Siegel Family Foundation, and the Embassy of Ireland. Today, in DEDSA, we have an ongoing onboarding of 30 new community liaisons, women leaders, who are a huge part of the work that we do. And really so much of what we do rests upon their shoulders because they are the bridge between community women and the Gender and Justice Unit. These 30 women join a group of already 70 community liaisons that we have working across the Lilongwe, Nkhotakota, and DEDSA. So now we're reaching 100 women, 100 bridges, 100 more ways for women to reach our work, besides Empowerline and besides our mobile legal clinics and mobile courts. So I call myself the rebel lawyer because I think about going about law in a different kind of way. And what I love about this work is that when a woman knows her rights, everything changes. I really hope that all of you will help us to make sure that she does. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarai. I don't really quite know what to respond to that. It just sounds really amazing. I think I learned much more than I know about my rights here in my country as well. So fantastic. Like we said before, if you have any comments, any questions, just put them in the chat or keep them for later, and we'll get back to you when after the next presentation. So our second speaker today is Harold Kuombola, and he is Link Education's Executive Director, Malawi. Harold will offer insights into Link's impactful projects, as well as sharing challenges and opportunities. Harold has over 15 years experience working in education, gender, young women's empowerment and community development, with hands-on technical experience in both project management and monitoring, evaluation and learning sectors. But I'm sure, again, Harold will be able to tell us much better himself who he is and what he does. Thank you, Harold. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dorothea. And thanks to all the SMP and all members who have joined. Indeed, I'm from Link Community Development, Malawi. So I'll be sharing part of our work, and great to see many of the people we work with also joining online and looking at together learning and sharing on what we have been doing in Malawi. So Link Community Development is in a global partnership of organizations with Link Education International, where my colleague Sam is coming from here. We have operations in Malawi, Uganda, and Ethiopia at the moment. So I'll be sharing more around our work across these three countries, but more critically from Malawi and what we have done in Malawi. So I'll be sharing from an education angle, and much of my discussion will be focusing on the learner, the youth, adolescent girls and boys, school-going children, or out-of-school youth. That's the focus of our work. And we believe that each of those youth, child growing up should have access and should enjoy their right to education. So maybe we can partner with the GJU on the right to education for each child in Malawi. They should have the right to education, not just access, but also quality education. So our work has focused on working with the national governments, specifically with the Ministry of Education, on ensuring that there's access to quality education for every child. So we do that by looking at innovating on low-cost strategies, approaches that can reach any corner of the country with quality education. Every person should access quality education, irrespective of their marginality or geographical locality or their condition in the house. So what are some of the low-cost strategies that governments can do, can apply to ensure they deliver quality education to all? So just a bit of our work. We started operations in Malawi in 2006, and we have been partnered to the Scottish government. Around 2015, one of our programs where we were piloting, what does it mean to say quality education? What is it actually? how can we measure that this is quality education, and particularly in the context of Malawi? So we were working on what could be the standards, what could be the indicators. So that program is scaled up from a pilot that Link was doing to now a national program that the ministry is using, and a set of 26 national indicators that are currently being used and applied across the country around defining or looking at a school to understand what it means to offer quality education at its school. These indicators are key because not just are they a guide, but they are also an indicator, a performance tool for a school, for a learner, for a teacher to understand what level are they at in offering what would be considered a standard education system or education level at that particular school. Alongside it is a concept of the school having to review itself by all stakeholders in a consolidated manner, school performance review, placing the data in the hands of the community at that particular school. So planning, really, when you talk of quality, you can't run away from the data. And this data, the question is, in whose hands is the data? Is it just at the headquarters level through this MIS system or other database at the MIS level or headquarters level or regional level, district education managers or district education offices? What about the point where that data is generated? The school itself, do they make use of the data? Do they understand the data, or they are just ticking the box, filling a form and sending it over? So part of this work was that data should first be used at the point where it is generated. So this is at the school level. A stakeholder at the school level, be it a member of the school management committee, PTA, a parent to a learner, should come together to look at their data from the school and get informed decisions or make informed decisions, evidence-based planning, based on the data that's coming out from their school. So again, going to the school quality, they should understand how their school is progressing. Now, this is work that moved us to look at presenting data in a manner that is understandable to every person, regardless of their literacy levels, because most of them are community-based people. Maybe they don't have adequate literacies. So information is presented in form of graphical analysis that tells them whether things are going up or things are going low, not necessarily in sophisticated statistics numbers, to ensure every person can understand. So that evidence goes on to link to a school improvement planning process. So schools should develop plans. Resourcing at the school level should be based on the evidence generated from that school. So resource allocation, no matter how small the resources are, but they should be allocated based on the evidence that's coming from the school. So this is key work that Link is looking at and working with the Ministry of Education and supporting schools to understand this process and looking at evidence generation, data collection, all the way to analyzing a school against standards is key and important for schools and administrators to understand how they are progressing or what quality of education they are offering to their learners. As part of that work, we also realized that there is a cohort of youth who are out of school. They're out of school youth. They are school-aged, but due to one reason or the other, they didn't enroll in school or dropped out before they could acquire functional literacy or numeracy. So we came in to also support foundational literacy, numeracy for school-aged out-of-school youth. So this is thanks to the support of DFID, FCDO, DFID back then, 2018, 2023. We enrolled 6,000 learners in about 320 accelerated non-formal education centers, complementary basic education. The idea is to offer them over a period of 2 years, accelerated curriculum that could cover the 4-year conventional primary school with an aim that they transition back into primary school, into government primary school at standard 5. So we saw the learners coming into the accelerated non-formal education and getting the functional literacy. At the end of that project in 2023, the end line showed that 77% of learners attained efficiency in literacy, and another 77% in numeracy. So those were significant results when you look at a context where the learning poverty in the country is only around, it's over 80%. So, but our learners achieved 77% proficiency as measured through EGLA and EGMA. So that is one other key window that we have looked at, and there's a key lesson that we have learned, that accelerated non-formal education is also a key way that can support transformation of a person in the education system. In that project, we also learned effects around the transition pathway, not only being the education side, but also looking at a person's livelihood. So we focused even on vocational skills for learners. Those learners who could not go back into standard 5, they were given other exit pathways, which included vocational skills training, carpentry, bricklaying, whatever the market assessment in their locality would do, or even entrepreneurship, soap making, tailoring. So we still have groups in there who are generating an income in Inchinji data from that program in 2023. And this is key to give someone that exit pathway and transformation in their life, really leaving no one behind, not just focusing on the in-school, but also the out-of-school youth. The significant results from this program led us to partner with the GPE, Global Partnership on Education, under the Knowledge Innovation and Exchange window, in partnership with the International Development Research Center of Canada, IDRC. So they have taken the key lessons from this program, the Accelerated Non-Formal Education Program, and we are researching on what are the enablers and the barriers that governments face to scale up innovations. So the aim is to scale up the innovations that were in this key program in all accelerated non-formal education centers that are being run by the Ministry of Education. We call them CBE centers. So at the moment, we have established communities of practice in 32 centers under the Ministry of Education. We are developing best practice guidelines from there that will support the ministry and other development partners to understand or to look at when you are coming in with a programming that's aiming at government or other stakeholders to scale up, what are the critical factors you should build from the beginning? What are the enablers that you should not miss from the beginning so that you can see your program being scaled up either by government or other development funders and so on. Again, the results from the work we were working on the out-of-school youth led us to also partner again with the Scottish government on inclusive education. So we are currently implementing a program supporting just below 6,000 learners, focusing on learners with disabilities. The work we were doing 2023, 2025, in the 320 schools, we realized that 13% of our learners were learners with disabilities. This is compared to a conventional government school where it is about 6%. We had more than twice as much. So it forced us to look into gender responsive, inclusive pedagogies and systems and piloting on those, or strengthening of those. So at the moment, we are now moving into the conventional public school and supporting inclusive education in the public schools, supporting access for learners, things like assistive devices, resource centers, resource rooms, as well as teaching and learning materials for those resource centers, and the knowledge for the teacher training on inclusive education. Beyond trainings, we are looking at institutionalization. So what systems can be put in place that a teacher gets the support they need on inclusive teaching? So we are working not just training teachers, but also strengthening the education monitoring system. We realize the key importance of supervision. If any person is trained and you're not supervised, even if you're employed in a job and you're not supervised, there's always a tendency to go off track. So we are strengthening supervision that we can look at teachers are practicing really inclusive pedagogy in the classrooms. Between 2020, when we had the pandemic and then Malawi faced the cyclones, we also looked into the issue of climate justice and responding to continuity of learning in pandemics. So we partnered with the Scottish Government through DI Global UK to implement the Climate Just Communities project in Neno. At the moment, we are going into the bridging phase under Oxfam, but still with the Scottish Government funding to build community capacity on anticipating, withstanding, and responding or recovery to climate shocks. So we worked with about 4,000 households in Neno on livelihoods, wash, resilient schools, loss and damage. But all our programming around these other thematic areas, climate change, inclusive education, is really to go back to the learner and ensuring that the learner is having adequate learning environment and is able to not only access learning, but also has got learning outcomes. So we are focusing on learning outcomes for the learners. Key lessons in our work. One of the key things is around strengthening data and evidence, focusing on learning outcomes and focusing on quality standards. We believe that everything else is benchmarked against quality KPIs, you will achieve and you have a clear direction. So implementation based on some set clear standards is key, and we'll be supporting that. But also bridging inequalities. So we have seen learners really transforming when they have their support. Learners who are out of school, being given a chance to go back into school, transition into primary school. We have some learners who are supported that have moved in 2015, that have moved on to be in the university. This was a learner who was not reading or writing at all. But through these programs, they are now in the university in Rwanda. So they are now able to change their life completely. And again, local partnerships, solutions are really better developed alongside or with the communities. So we have gone really strong in developing our team's capacity on building or conducting participatory vulnerability assessments where the community are having an input, shaping the direction of what the intervention should be so that they direct target where their needs are. In that way, we are seeing that there is efficient resource allocation, and the community are also really having a strong buy-in on the programs and willing to support program outcomes. So I know that there will be questions, but I just wanted to set that framework. So I'll be happy to take questions. But this is key interventions or work that Link Community Development Malawi alongside Link Education International have done in Malawi, supporting learners and learning outcomes and the education environment overall. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold. There's so much variety in the program that you deliver. It sounds amazing. Can I now pass to Linda Dembo, the CEO of MaSP, for initial reflections on the presentations. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you so much, Dorothea. I hope I'm loud and clear. Before maybe I give my reflections, I just want to acknowledge that this discussion on advancing equality, justice, and education happens against a specific background here in Malawi. And Malawi has made real progress in as far as the topic is concerned. We have seen more girls completing their primary education, and we have also had strong legal frameworks like the Gender Equality Act that our members are quite well aware of. But as the data of the UN Women confirms, these significant gaps are still there, and we still see low female political representation, and at the moment it stands at about 21% in parliament, to the fact that 94% of employed women are in the formal sector. And this tells us that our challenge is not just about 2 laws or policies. It is about the implementation of those laws and the translation of policies into our lived reality. This is a gap where civil society and organizations like the Gender and Justice Unit and Link Education are also very important. Maybe just also to just give a reflection in terms of the Malawi perspective, the choice of today's focal areas. First, maybe let me just say, Sarai's work with the GJU shows us that justice cannot be passive. Many Malawians, especially women and girls in rural areas, just as you have heard from her, face the justice gap. They don't know their rights or cannot afford to access formal courts when those rights are violated. So GJU's model, using community-based paralegals, as you have heard, blends traditional and formal systems into an innovative precisely because it meets people where they are. And it turns the law from an abstract document into a practical tool for fighting gender-based violence. But challenges and discrimination and securing possible land rights or inheritance rights are actually being dealt with their model that they have just clearly stipulated. And looking at what Harold had just talked about on inclusive education, he points out that a sustainable education system must reach all learners, despite maybe their ability or their disability. So in Malawi, this means moving beyond simply getting children into the classroom. It is asking, are children with disabilities able to learn? It's asking, are girls who face periodic poverty or early marriages being supported to stay in school? Are the poorest children who may be working to survive being reached through complementary basic education? So links focus on safeguarding and gender inclusive approaches, as they have said, is critical because an education that exclusively looks at a child is actually asking the question and actually delivering on the justice to give to that child. So this brings me to talk about our role as Malawi-Scotland partnership. What is our specific value here? In my view, it is not as a donor or as an implementer, but a connector, a capacity builder, and an amplifier of the Malawian voice. As the national umbrella body of Malawi organization with Scottish links, Malawi-Scotland Partnership's job is to ensure projects like GJU's legal aid programs or links education initiatives are not working alone. We can connect the dots. For example, how does a child education project like Links connect to a legal empowerment project preventing child marriage? Secondly, MaSP's role exists to help align our diverse civic projects with Malawi's own national vision, the Malawi 2063. We help ensure that Scottish partnerships resources are not just well-intentioned, but are strategically supporting Malawi's own long-term priorities for wealth creation, self-resilience, and industrialization, which all start with an educated, healthy, and legally empowered population. And thirdly, MaSP's most vital role is to ensure that priorities come from here, locally led development. We facilitate forums, cluster meetings, and consultations where Malawian experts like Sarai and Harold, as you've heard from them, define the problems, and together we propose the solutions from a Malawian perspective. And MaSP ensures that Scottish partners hear the legal challenges, the real challenges that we are facing here in Malawi on the ground, and opportunities directly sent to the Malawian civil societies addressing those challenges. So my reflection today ends with a personal commitment and a shared question. This commitment is that to move from participating to genuine ownership. As I listened to the speakers today, I was asking myself, not just what did I learn, but how can MaSP be a better platform for Malawian expertise to support local accountability and help translate today's inspiring ideas that we have had into tangible change in communities from Nsanje to Chitipa, not just in Lilongwe or in Dedza. And my question to all of us here as partners is, are we truly building the capacity of Malawian institutions, like MaSP itself, like GJU or Link Education, to lead or are funding our institutions to follow their preset agendas? Because true justice and equality will only be sustained when they are Malawian-led. I'm actually deeply encouraged to see that experts like Sarai and Harold are leading these conversations. Their work on the ground, using the law to empower the powerless and education to unlock potential, is the very definition of advancing justice. Malawi-Scotland partnership stands ready to support, connect, and champion that work. Looking forward to hearing your reflections as well as we deliberate and ask questions from what they have actually shared with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda. I can't see the questions that are in the chat at the moment, if there are any. But what I would like to encourage you to do is, even if you put a question in the chat, if you could put your camera on, ideally, and ask your question in person, as it were, so we can see you and have a bit more of a personal interaction. Are there any questions in the chat?
Yes. I said there's one.
Okay, so there's one from, I can't see who it's from.
It's just Lenovo. I think
It's somebody who is signed on with their device name rather than anything. And it says, I am a young girl with a hearing impairment and a disability inclusion advocate. My question goes to the second presenter, so that's Harold. If they do also involve those with disabilities in the projects, as so far as I know, inclusive education in Malawi is so behind, and a special needs teacher, I see most times we don't get involved in spaces like these.
Yeah.
Harold.
Right, thank you so much. First, to agree that inclusive education programming still has a long way to go in time. I think that's a reality. As I highlighted, our work is looking at innovations that can be scaled up to government or through government across the country in all schools. So one way we have done to ensure inclusivity of even the teachers with the various learning needs or handling learners with learning needs is starting off with participative analytics analysis. We are working in 111 schools in Malawi, and in the first phase, we just met with all the 2,443 teachers in those schools. So we made sure we meet each and every teacher to understand their lived context, their classroom environment, large classrooms, crowded classrooms, one teacher. How do you handle it? What sort of learning difficulties or maybe disabilities do you face in your classroom? So that was the first exercise we did in this project. First phase last year, towards the beginning of last year. So we consolidated what the teachers made as their input as key challenges, some generic, some specific. Then we went on with the ministry to look at innovations that can be done, low-cost innovations, classroom support. We are at the moment in the second phase. We went in to work with the teachers on some strategies or innovations that could be done, and we are meeting the teachers again. So I'm not sure where this person is asking from, but would be glad to connect with you to also share with you details of those and what could be done, and also learn from you in terms of what else you think could be the gap. We could go more technical. We can share details of problem through SMP or the sister MaSP. We'll be happy to connect with that one and learn more. Beyond that, we looked at resource centers, because there are schools who are constrained to achieve learning outcomes for learners with disabilities because of capacities and resource materials for learners with various needs. So we are also supporting resource rooms or resource centers where there's a resource center, or a resource room where there is none, so that at least all types of learners, despite their learning difficulty, can be achieved. But key to this is our work towards the national education standards. So wherever every teacher is at, irrespective of whether they are participating in this project or not, there are indicators that are supporting teaching quality for learners with disabilities. If we can also look at those and follow those within our schools, we would be supported on supporting a learner, irrespective of their disability. But we can share contacts probably through the two sister organizations. We can discuss more and learn more from each other.
So yeah, so we said at the beginning, this meeting will be is recorded, and the recording will be on our past events page. And we will also on there have the links to the various organizations as well for you to connect. Are there any questions in person? Does anybody? Okay, I think that's Jimmy.
Yes. Thank you very much. My name once again is Jimmy Mzirahoa. I am the Director of PRESA in Community Development. I should not be like a question, but rather just to appreciate the effort, or rather also to appreciate the presentations. To me and to PRESA, it's a great opportunity to network further. I just have liked this friend who just presented recently about the effort that you are able to connect. Like at PRESA, we have a community resource center here in Karonga, and I would prefer that maybe you come this side, or we start getting in touch. I think we can utilize such places. It's a community resource center where a number of activities are happening. Women are doing income-generating activities like tailoring, and they are keeping pottery, and then I think they have issues also. Children, we have a feeding program at our place, so I think it's a good place for such issues to also be addressed. So I would prefer that we network further. I've just dropped my contact in the chat box. I think I will be happy if we can interact further, and then we see how best we can learn from your side. And then also you can also take advantage of our being already here in Karonga. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
We just missed each other there, Jimmy. We were in Karonga with some, is it March?
You missed me?
February, March. I think maybe we just did. We were in Karonga end of February, beginning of March with Sam. We were meeting other partners. We were working with Cadecom. We went to some school. But we'll connect. Thanks so much.
Okay, that will be great if you come again. I think let's get in touch.
Sure. All right.
I think there was potentially someone else trying to speak. Yes, there we are. Please tell us your name and where you come from and who your question might be for.
Yes, thank you, everyone. My name is Vesiam Chikoza Pili in the Directorate of Inclusive Education. Actually, mine is not a question, but just to say just a few things about what the last speaker said. In fact, by Harold, what he said. Just want to emphasize that I think over the past few years, we really indeed have been, the link has been working in close relation with the Directorate of Inclusive Education on the matters of trying to support issues of inclusive education. Indeed, there has been some trainings that have been going on with the teachers all along to help them to get some basic skills on how they can support learners with diverse needs. There's been some support in that way. And of course, I know that in the chat box, somebody asked, which is a very, very good question. And I'm really impressed because it shows that indeed issues of inclusive education have to go beyond what we think, which is quite okay. But just to explain that probably, I'm not sure where the writer is from, but just to explain that it has been noted that over the past few years, probably the extent of which Link has been working is not quite covering all the areas in Malawi. But of course, just a few areas, of course, it may not be very possible to cover all the areas, all the schools, all the districts and divisions in Malawi. But certainly, as a directorate, we are actually very grateful for what it is doing in order to ensure that learners with diverse needs in the primary schools, alongside the teachers, both specialist teachers, but also mainstream teachers, are being supported. It's obvious that maybe by and by, these skills will be cascaded on a larger scale to some of the districts and schools which have already been reached. So I just want to support that what Harold has said. I think is very, very correct and very true. As a ministry, we are trying hard, we're trying our best to ensure that we reach out to the as far extent as we can, so that every learner actually is supported accordingly as much as time should be. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the room? If you hold up your hand virtually or show a hand if there's a question. There's a question in the room. We've got Sam here who has a question.
Thank you, Dorothea. How interesting to hear both those presentations. Of course, I know quite a lot about Harold's work, but really interesting to hear what Sarai was saying as well. And great to hear the input from Linda, who was really joining both presentations together in a really salient way. I loved her points about Link and JGU maybe coming together to think about child marriage, gender-based violence, I don't know, corporal punishment in schools. I think there's lots of overlap that we can talk about together. So thank you, SMP and MaSP, for bringing us together. And my question is to Sarai about, aside from funding, which is a barrier for everybody, what other barriers there might be to expanding your work across Malawi and maybe even beyond? Because I'm sure this work is very relevant, as Dorothea mentioned earlier, in the UK, but across other countries in Africa as well.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Sam. I think the barriers are myriad. As you said, funding is obviously one of them. As I mentioned, that we, for the first time now, have a 3-year funding just focused on the work around the IVR and providing legal empowerment information through that means. Other barriers include, I think there's always challenges in making sure that what you're doing is going to feed directly into what the government is doing. So creating a model that can be easily adopted and integrated into the government system.
Yeah.
I think ultimately as organizations and civil society, the work that we're doing is always to support what the government is trying to achieve for its peoples. And ultimately, the hope is to develop something that the Malawi government can see its use. I mean, I think it's really incredible the way the directory came online to support the work that they're doing with Harold. It shows that this is getting integrated into the government system. But the Gender and Justice Unit, I do want to say that despite what challenges exist, we see the recognition that the Ministry of Gender also gives to our work. We were so excited when this year, due to global changes in terms of travel and travel restrictions on Malawians, we were not able to attend the Commission on the Status of Women in March in New York. And government partners were able to do so. And so the Ministry of Gender asked us to give them the data that we have collected so far on the work that we are doing, and they presented it on our behalf. So even though GJE was not able to be in the room, the ministry shared that message for us. And so I'm seeing what I always thought might be a barrier really falling away. And then other than that, I think this last week, both Harold and I were attending the SCOL World Forum in Oxford. A lot of learning from that. Obviously, very chaotic, very frenetic, very energetic week. But one of the main things that I took away from that is that resilience of organizations like ours is going to come a lot, not just from our relationship with donors, but from our connectivity and networking across as African leaders. And in conversations, just as you've mentioned how this could work in the school setting to respond to corporal punishment and so on. I met with somebody from Uganda who's also working with adolescent girls and young women, who saw how a system in a model like ours could be used to also provide legal related information there. I also want to share that during the recent elections in Malawi, we actually shifted the IVR, took down all our gender-based violence, all our gender-related laws, and put elections information on it instead. So we were providing live-time information about how elections are meant to be run, what time the polling stations will close, what rights you have if you're stood in line when the polling stations close, and how to report any kind of behavior misconduct that you noticed. We were running a gender desk and had people calling. We had 11 cases that came up during that period of time that we responded to right there and then, because in the room we had the Human Rights Commission, we had the Malawi Police Services. So I don't know that the barriers are insurmountable. They are there, but I'm seeing them more as opportunities to innovate rather than structural challenges in our way. And I think scale is coming at a pace that we can manage. We've been small before, and a lot of that was about, we developed something that really is new. And so tinkering with it, changing it up. We have currently 4 languages on the IVR. English is the least used language, showing that providing legal information in the vernacular is an urgent need. By the end of this year, we intend to have all the 8 translation languages that we have online. We can handle 4 calls concurrently. We want to have 20 calls concurrently by the end of the year. So some of the barriers, but barriers seen as opportunities.
Right,
Thank you for that. We also have someone online. Is this in connection to
Yes,
what's just been said?
Yeah.
Siona, I can see you've got your hand up, but I'm just quickly going to take Nasim in the room as well.
Yeah, mine, so it'll be a quick one, so we can get the other one. But thank you, Harold, and thank you, Sarai. So it's more directed to Sarai. So I just want to ask, let's in terms of the work that you're supporting Malawian men and women, offering them the legal guidance. So how do you navigate cultural barriers? Because I'll give an example. Let's say you give an example of a woman who probably the husband has died. They have kids. The other family will probably come try to take the property. So she's living in that same community. That's like more in the rural setting that we're looking at in the village. She's living in that community. Her family is definitely the husband's family. So she goes and seeks legal counsel. And at this point, she's been assisted. You've brought the help that she needs. She's won the case. How do you navigate in this situation where she has to go back to the community and live with the same people without feeling secluded, I would say, because they're going to start looking down on her when it's things like that. So how do you offer support to such incidents? And then for gender-based violence, a woman comes, my husband is doing this, or a man comes, my wife is doing A, B, C, D. You've offered her the legal support that she needs. She has to go back to that same community. Do you offer any extra support to that? Okay.
Thank you for putting me on the spot. I love this. So, like I said, the rebel lawyer. Oftentimes I see that the promise of the law is like paper tiger, beautiful in writing, but completely toothless. And like you said, these issues arise in the context of community and culture. And in fact, when you think about justice, what does justice really mean? What is a just outcome? It might not be the correct legal outcome. We have had victims and survivors before who have come forward asked for assistance, seeking a protection order, getting a divorce, and then going back to their husband. And that's okay, because what did justice really mean for that woman? What did she really need? When we work in communities, we do so in partnership with traditional leadership. So we actively train the traditional leaders on what the law says, because it isn't only the women who might not be aware of what the latest provisions of the law are. What the law says in the law right now is that when a spouse dies, the ones who are set to benefit, inherit, is the spouse and the biological or otherwise children, so your adopted children, children that you're looking after, those are the ones to inherit. We know that traditionally, culturally, our cultural justice system had a different way of inheritance, laws and distribution, but even they are bound by what the law of Malawi says. Now, what good is that if they don't know what the law of Malawi says? Zoni Dabo, who has her hand up, is actually a judge of the High Court of Malawi. And we work closely with them. And what we do, because traditional leaders, they hold a very special role in our imagination and in our lives of communities in Malawi. In fact, when we ask women, where is the nearest court? They will point to the nearest traditional leader and their walo, their gathering space, their opening. That is what they consider to be the court. And so we don't fight that system, because that is the reality. When we have moved our mobile legal clinics from Dedza to another area, that court system will still continue. So we need to shore up that existing system. They need to know what the law says. The community members know what the law says. The traditional leader knows what the law says. Then you start to break away at those cultural barriers that you're talking about, at that kind of seclusion that you're talking about. The other thing I quickly want to say is that we never go there alone. We always move with the social welfare officers, so the district structures that exist. Because when we're gone, oftentimes community members may not even be aware of what is available to them at the district level. Sometimes it's so far away that it's beyond even their imagination. The cost of that transportation to get from Osa, Tambolagwa to the Boma is beyond what they're willing to invest in for something that they don't know even exists. But when we bring those officers to those villages and they understand this exists, we know that even beyond our presence in the village, the work will continue. The last important piece is community liaisons. They work to support not just with legal information, but we're training them in psychological first aid. We train them in trauma-informed responses. We make sure that they know about what mechanisms are there for referrals. So when there's continuing challenges with the family, when there's continuing concerns, they know to call the social welfare officers, the child protection officers, the police services, the court officials themselves. It's never going to be perfect. We have so many gaps, but when we know what we're dealing with, at least we can try to respond to it.
Thank you. That answers, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Judge Taba, if you would like to.
All right. I apologize. I'm using my phone, my phone for today, so I apologize about that. I just wanted to highlight two things. And thank you, Sarai, for mentioning Women Judges Association. I just wanted to highlight how much this work of legal empowerment requires collaborative efforts and partnerships with all sorts of organizations, and not just necessarily macro level. I think Sarai has mentioned the need for the micro level partnerships. So the women's group, the women's groups, the churches in the grassroots that we're working at. You also work with people who are like community victim support units that are literally at the grassroots level. So those interconnections, I think, it's what makes a sustainability aspect of the work that's being undertaken to actually stay on when the programming has shifted. But I wanted to add on to what Sarai was talking about when that question was asked. The last question was asked about how do you best get the woman or the girl or the man who's been abused to still stay in the same community despite a negative outcome from the courts. One of the fundamental things that we've done, I think, through the work that we've done with DJU and a number of others is you have to program justice. I think people always think justice can't be programmed or the rule of law can't be programmed. It has to be programmed in a way that ensures that you're looking at the impact level of the issues. So when the legal empowerment clinics are being undertaken, as Sarai has stated, there will be the traditional leaders, there will be the police. We actually do invite the police to those things. We do invite medical officers, social workers, and all those things. And those people will talk about the impact of the laws, apart from just the law itself being informed as to what the rights and the obligations and the violations are, but they will talk about impact. So when a mobile court comes in and actually comes through with either a conviction for a person who was sexually assaulted a child, whether it was within the family or outside the family, or whether it's a woman who was dispossessed of property grabbing and that property grabbing has been taken up, the fact that that court happened in that area acts as a deterrence for further violation, because people will now know that if we do violate another person's rights, apart from the original one of property grabbing, the court will still come here and take us away. And nobody wants to go to jail. Nobody wants to be fined. So that in itself also acts as a major deterrent. So the mobile courts, the legal empowerments are actually deterrents by the fact that they happen within the vicinity of the incident, the rights violations that we're talking about in the particular court. So I just wanted to highlight that. I hope it makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions in the room, online, in the chat?
Just a practical one, Sarai. How is your number of 4285? How is it publicised?
So we publicize it on the radio right now,
Right.
and we publicize it in the vernacular. What we have seen is that, like I said, we're still tinkering, figuring this out. And we see that there's still quite a lot of dropped calls. And we think that people are not used to responding to having an IVR respond to them. They expect somebody to say hello when they phone. And so having something say, these are your options, choose a number. So we've changed up our advertising. We made sure that our advertisement before was gender neutral. So we didn't say that this is a line for women's rights only. We said this is a line to access information about violence and other things like that. This time we've also added in, and this is going to be aired very soon. I think I mentioned earlier that we were being very careful with scale. We only had the one paralegal manning the phone because you can get through to GJU. That's one of the options. You can choose to speak to an officer of the Gender and Justice Unit. And if I don't have an officer to respond to that call, very soon nobody will be calling anymore. So we would advertise in the areas where we work. So in NIDSA, we would advertise on community radio there, a little bit on Facebook, because there is quite a lot of Facebook usage across Malawi. And then every time when we speak about it, but now we're going on an active campaign. We're getting the staffing in, or scaling up the numbers that can take calls one at a time. But we're largely going to answer your question. We're largely going to be on the radio. Yeah. And we said stay on the line.
Yeah.
Don't stay on the line. Don't hang up.
Well, thanks.
And thank you, Judge Z, for contributing.
Is there any other question, comments?
We can.
Are you happy for us to share your LinkedIn profiles? Yes, so we shall.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hiya. Hello.
Question from Martha.
Yes, I'm just going to turn on my camera. I think this has been a very informative session. I want to thank GGU and Link Education. I mean, when Shemi was speaking, it took me back in time to when I was working with British Council in Nigeria, and we had tried to pilot something similar to what she had mentioned. But we were not able to scale, obviously, because of funding, and also, like she mentioned, integrating this structure into the existing structure of the Women Affairs. But I was just going to drop more like a recommendation or a suggestion, particularly for your campaign, if you've not already thought about it. I know that for very sensitive programs like this, we may not really want to engage with mainstream and social media, but from experience for myself and for partners within the gender-based violence space, I think really engaging social media in a way that it is targeted as the specific target audience, but also we can get allies from the campaigns that are run, the adverts that are run on these social media spaces, and we can get more young people talking about it and spreading the information across, because I for one understand that things related to, gender-based violence or gender equity or equality is gathering momentum, particularly amongst young people. And where would you find them? You'd often find them on social media spaces, and even down to the community, just like you mentioned, the Facebook groups. I think Facebook groups can also help, Instagram, TikTok. But I know again that for sensitive conversations like this, we would really not want to state through social media. But again, I feel like you can also use social media during your campaign awareness to promote your program and to also create more awareness, particularly at the community level. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do you want to respond in any way?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you, Marticela. That was really very helpful. Whilst I focused on the IVR, which is the phone line, which is really targeting those who might not be able to interact well with written materials, when we were working on the IVR, I remembered that actually women like myself are also not the target of this kind of information campaigns. Very often we are left behind. There's an assumption that you know your rights or you would know where to go to access them. And so we developed the Empowerline Malawi app, which is available free on both the Google Play and the iOS stores. And the app has all of the information that is available on the IVR and our booklets online, but in more detail, including other areas such as online violence. It has violence against children. It has links to the laws themselves. And I have some incredible young people on my team who said we need to be on social media talking about this. And so during our 16 Days of Activism campaign last year, we engaged with some young Malawian influencers who generated their own content talking about the app, talking about violence that young people experience, especially online in Malawi, speaking in the vernacular, speaking in the language that they already were speaking to their communities. And it was really invigorating. And so I really appreciate your advice that we do need to have these conversations in social media spaces. It's certainly something that we have at the forefront of our minds, because as much as we're on the radio for the use of 4285, I think for those who would benefit from the mobile application, we need to be in social media spaces more. One last thing is that the mobile application was only in English, and we understood that that is a huge barrier, because the majority of Malawians that I see in online spaces and Facebook chat groups and so on are actually communicating in the vernacular. So right now we are translating the entire app so that it'll be in 2 languages. There is an integrated chatbot feature that is limited to what's available on the app. And we're working those kinks out. Hopefully you follow us across our social media platforms and help amplify the work that the Gender and Justice Unit is doing, and perhaps replicate it where you are. So thank you so much for your comment.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I wondered if sort of with limited resources, you don't want to advertise too broadly if you then can't actually respond to any queries and questions. It's that sort of balance. I suppose it must be the same for Link Education as well. All the good work, but you cannot be everywhere and there for everybody at the same time yet, I suppose.
Hopefully soon.
Yes. Any other questions from the room, online, in person? If not, then I will pass over to Stuart Brown to give us some closing remarks, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Dorothea.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you. And well, I found that a really inspirational conversation. So thank you so much. And I think that's reflected across the comments in the room and online, and the interest in the chat and the follow-up. I think that Linda's put her finger up on it when she says that you meet people where they are. That's something that has really struck me. And that you're working, as you said, Sarai, on what directly feeds into what government is planning and doing. And fantastic that we've had today representatives of the Directorate of inclusive education in Malawi. Join us. Thank you so much. The Scottish Government's International Development Department, James, has been with us. The Women Judges Association, you've mentioned Sarai, High Court Judge Justice Ntaba, and participants all over Malawi and Scotland, as far north as Shetland, which is fabulous. Both of our speakers are really powerfully meeting people, beneficiaries, where they are recognising the challenges that are very real for them in their own communities that they're facing, translating things into their own in their own language, in their own community, meeting them physically where they are. And Sarai, the rebel lawyer, amazing that somebody's calling the Empower line every 2 hours, and that you're bringing paralegals, magistrates, and these vital community liaison representatives from the individuals' own communities to the very homes of these individuals. As you say, justice being delivered often for the very first time in a community, and in your own words, from silence to justice. Amazing, having reached over 4,000 people already, and fabulous to hear of the expansion into 11 districts. So really inspirational work. Harold, really struck by how brilliantly pragmatic the approach is as well, looking at what low-cost strategies are, and starting with what it means to offer quality education. And then not for it to be abstract or removed or in the hands of some sort of elite capture, but bringing the data into the hands of stakeholders, both in the school and in the community, and translating that into a graphical, pictorial form so that different levels of literacy are not an issue. And then fantastic that in these 320 non-formal education centres, 77% of the learners achieving proficiency in literacy and numeracy. And we have a great problem in this country, in Scotland as well, with people who dropped out, multi-generation people not in employment and not in education. So as ever, there is much that Scotland can learn from Malawi and your approach. And I wonder, Harold, if Sarai's the rebel lawyer, I wonder what your moniker would be. Are you perhaps the crucial link?
Yeah.
Which draws our attention as well to the possible partnership with GJU and Link, which you've identified yourselves, and Sam has kindly amplified. At the SNP, we're looking forward to meeting with Malawian High Court judges in June as they come to collaborate with the Scottish Government and Police Scotland. That's an exciting opportunity that's coming up. We also have another event on women and girls education, where we're going to hear in person from Mercy Sibanda, and the Maybe Martin Fund's country lead, from Susan Dalgetty on behalf of the McConnell International Foundation, and from Lindsay Graham of the SOCO Fund. That's on May the 28th, and all of the details are on the Scotland-Malawi Partnerships website and socials. But for now, thank you to our speakers, to Sarai and Harold, to Dorothea for chairing, for Linda for co-hosting, this being a Scotland-Malawi Partnership and Malawi-Scotland Partnership joint event, and to colleagues in the SNP and MaSP for all of their work behind the scenes. So thank you very much for taking time to be with us today, both in person and online. Dorothy, I'll hand back to you to formally close the event.
Oh, I didn't know I was going to do that. Yeah, well, thank you all for joining us. As I said before, the event is being recorded. It will be uploaded on the past event website as quickly as possible as we can. We will also have a copy of the chat with all the links that you can find there. If you need any further information, do get in touch with us. We can link you. We can do e-introductions to both Harold and Sarai. And yes, so thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us, and hope to see you soon again. The next meeting is on the 28th of May. Thank you very much.
Thank you.